Sleep Number's new collections are designed to adapt to the changing nature of your life and your sleep needs. Whether it's the personalized comfort of the Comfort Mode mattress, the targeted pressure relief of the Comfort Next mattress, or the Climate Collection that actively cools or warms to help you fall asleep and stay asleep.
And now, all beds are on sale during our biggest sale of the year. Save 25% on the new Comfort Next Luxe, plus free delivery on any mattress. Ends Monday, only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to take questions as part of our August mailbag. And as usual, we got a lot of really good questions this month. In fact, I think in terms of the range and the broadness of the topics, this might be the best mailbag episode we've had all year. We'll find out in a little bit here. But first, as we like to do at the top of every episode, we want to welcome some new members to our Patreon community. And for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yes. I forgot I can't switch tabs because the audio will go weird. But thank you to Ben Colson. It was nice to see you at Hopkins Brewery over the weekend. Hopefully I didn't guilt trip you into signing up for the Patreon, but it is appreciated nonetheless. And also Ryan Prenger signed up at the AA level for a year up front. Very generous. Hope you guys enjoy pick up what we're putting down. And also shout out to Cannon, who made us a intro with his band that I forgot to put at the front of last week's episode. So you'll start hearing that this week if you're listening on the podcast feed. So thanks for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to hearing that for the first time on the podcast feed this week. But get into our mailbag. I'm just going to dive right into the first question. And one of the bigger stories come out of Birdland last week is that Luis De Leon is being prepared right now for a potential bullpen role in the major leagues down the stretch this year. And the Bird is the Word wants to know what our thoughts are on De Leon getting prepared for that bullpen role. And I'll start it off with Nick for this question.
It was pretty cool to see. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's something we've talked about a few times, I feel like, this year is a real possibility just because he's got to be added to the 40-man roster this offseason. So if you weren't going to trade him at the deadline, which you still could, obviously, but I think the organization's been pretty clear about how highly they think of him. And, of course, there's fun potential as a starter with all of his stuff, but also very playable as like a late inning bullpen arm with that velo from the left side and some of his secondaries. But, it kind of got me thinking when I saw that tweet. We're trying to find little bits of happiness here as the season winds down. I feel like, all right, he's going to get caught up to the major leagues soon, hopefully. Felix Bautista started his rehab. What if you see like a Luis De Leon in the 8th and Felix Bautista in the 9th type situation down the stretch? That could be a lot of fun. Not saying that we're banging the table to like make that switch permanently for Luis De Leon, but some potentially fun to see here these last few weeks. But yeah, I don't know, just he's going to get that chance to work a couple innings in the major leagues. If he's going to be out there in the bullpen, hopefully he's soaking up everything he can out there, sitting, hanging out with Felix Bautista in the bullpen, hanging out with some of these veterans who have been here, and he can pick up some things. And like, it's honestly, I feel like if he does debut this year, and watching him on that major league team will probably be like a little emotional, just because it's like, this is a guy that we followed very closely. We've watched for years. He signed for $20,000-$30,000 a couple of years ago. Just this way under the radar international prospect, signed and developed by the Orioles. You saw that story last year that came out about, the headspace he was in, how bad it was, questioning his abilities, crying after outings, like things were getting so bad. But for him to turn things around and kind of dominate in the Arizona Fall League, and now he struggled a little bit this year, but found his footing, and now he's in AAA, and now they're like, hey, we're praying you to get to the big leagues this year. Pretty cool moment for him, and I hope they do bring him up this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was just exciting to hear that because, I mean, like you said, it makes a ton of sense. He's going to be added to the 40-man no matter what. You already know that this offseason. Why not? If you need left-handed bullpen help, especially, I feel like he is the guy, unless you're going to jump Micah Ashman up. But I think after watching Kate Anderson skip AAA and being able to adjust to the Major League ball, I can see why maybe that's not the greatest idea in the world. But LDL, he's looked pretty good in his short time already at AAA, and he got a couple outings, short stints, 1 innings, and hasn't looked phenomenal, but just getting used to it. And even if the Orioles, as we're about when we're recording this, it's a day off, headed into a 9-game road trip that seems prime for an opportunity. If they're going to make a run, it's going to have to start now because it gets a little bit trickier and tougher after this road trip against St. Louis, Colorado, and another bad team in the mix. Yes, that's right. I didn't know which location because it's just the A's. Yeah, so hopefully you win at least 6 or 7 of those. And we get to see Luis De Leon and Felix Bautista respectively come back and have meaningful innings. And hopefully if they're out of it, they still do it just to throw us a bone and have something to watch as it happens. And just speaking on Bautista for a second, he had his first rehab appearance, which was really cool to see. Tuned in for that. You know, command was all over the place. Couldn't command anything, but every once in a while, one of those pitches looked like vintage Felix, even though it was 95 to 97 and 19 inches of inverted break, which in his prime was like 100 with 22 inches, but it's still cool to see. He'll probably get that full 30-day rehab time, and hopefully by the end of it, he's able to at least make some major league innings, and then over the offseason just continue to get better and better because shoulder injuries are no joke. A lot of pitchers do not come back from them. So the fact that he's even able to be on a professional mound in August, like a year later after getting shoulder surgery, is pretty impressive.
Good points there about Bautista. And going back to De Leon, I still prefer that long-term the Orioles try to develop him as a starter just because I think that even though he's not going to be a guy that's going to eat a substantial number of innings for you over the course of the season, there's just not a lot of left-handed starters like that in the game. There's a lot of peak Framber Valdez in De Leon, a guy that can generate a lot of ground balls, also rack up the strikeouts. It's hard to find those kind of pitchers. So I hope they do continue to develop him as a starter, but for the purposes of this year, when he's already thrown a lot of innings, but you want to get his feet wet in the majors. And if you are in contention by the time he comes up, that's a potentially interesting weapon for you coming out of the bullpen, especially because it's felt like at a lot of points this season, the Orioles have really been lacking having, a good shutdown left-handed reliever late in the games, or even somebody who can pick up innings in the middle of the games. At various points this year, it's felt like they've had one, but not both. So De Leon can give them a little more depth in that area. Also,
gets a ton of ground balls. We know that he can miss bats, so it's a good weapon. He could be like left-handed Ynier Cano. I mean, we're talking upside. He's going to be probably a little nervous, 23, 24 years old, making a major league debut, but that's the kind of upside he could have from the left side, if not better, if he continues in this role, which I could see. Or this could also give him a decent shot at, look, he'll be on the 40-man. He'll have made his major league debut if he goes into the offseason. If and when they ever get spring training started next year, then could put him a little bit of a leg up in the competition to see who could maybe grab that 5th starter spot, along with Trey Gibson, Nestor Erman, and whoever else, Joseph Giroux, Heinsohn, list goes on, but could be.
All right, we'll move on to Fujinami Truther. He's asked, why do Ike Irish and Vahiva Aloy seem so underrated nationally? Is it rose-tinted glasses, or are they not getting the love that they deserve, Zach?
I'll start with Aloy, and that is that I think Aloy has a high bar to clear because there were so many questions about the hit tool coming out of college. And a lot of the same evaluators that are putting these lists together now were following Aloy's college career closely. And even though he's had a very good year at the plate, you look at the strikeout rate in Frederick, and it does still kind of leave that question of, is the hit tool going to be good enough for him to be a solid everyday shortstop in the major leagues? If the answer is yes, then at a bare minimum, he should be back-end top 100 on most of these lists, but he hasn't really been cracking them at a high rate this year, and I have to think that that's the reason why As far as how he's going to overcome that, I think he's looked pretty good at Chesapeake in the first couple of weeks he's been there. Carry that over into next year, get the strikeout rate down some, continue to play good defense, and now you start looking at him as, okay, maybe instead of striking out above 25% of the time, he's striking out slightly below that. He's still walking 10% of the time, still hitting for power. Then you're going to start to see him pop up a little bit more, I think. As for Iris, I find that one a little bit harder to answer, short of either questions about where he's going to land on the field defensively and whether the bat's going to carry there. I think that he's going to settle in just fine as an everyday right fielder who gives you plus arm strength, questionable range, but plus arm strength in the outfield, good hit tool, 15, 20 homer power, maybe a little bit better at his peak, but that's also a questionable profile if he ends up at first base. So I have to think that that's maybe the reason why maybe it is ground ball rate is also a concern, but I have a feeling that if Iris had been able to finish out this year healthy and keep doing what he was doing in Frederick at Double-A, he would have been consensus top 100 prospect going into next season.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think, honestly, they're kind of just boring from a prospect standpoint, where they're college players, don't really have any huge standout trait. I know Eloy has serious pop and power and is a great fielder, but I feel like it's not like a 60-plus grade on either of those, so it's just tough. I think it's going to take them to get to Eloy is, but Double-A, Triple-A, and continuing to perform the way they have to really take a lot of prospect lists by storm. I think it's fine if we know who they are. Irish 5-tool player who can just be solid at everything and hopefully continue to improve. And Eloy, a serious shortstop with power, if not swing and miss concerns. So if they continue that, I think they'll pretty easily land on top 100s a year from now. But that's all right. They can be our little hidden secret gems in the minor leagues depth. I mean, it's not top 100 lists are fun, but they are certainly not everything. Does not mean that they're not going to be good breakout players at the major league level. So over time, I've come to take them with a grain of salt, especially when we've seen some where Caden Hunter's nowhere to be found, Eric Longenhagen with Fangraphs. But yeah, it's not surprising to me, but I agree that they should at least get more consideration than they probably do.
Yeah, if you're talking about top 100 lists, yeah, I don't care about those lists at all. But it is a pretty easy explanation, just like you guys kind of touched on, though. Ike Irish, it's became clear that he's not going to catch, and I said that was fine. I thought that I said on draft day, like, stick this guy in right field and let the bat play, because like he showed pretty strong. I mean, he's got an incredible arm, but he showed really good defense in right field at Auburn when I forget the exact injury he had, but he was fine enough to get out there and play, but they didn't want him behind the plate for most of the year. But he took to right field like it was pretty much nothing down there. And I'm not saying like he's an elite defender or anything, but you would have never guessed that the guy was hurt and was out in right field because they didn't want him catching at that point. But yeah, he's a corner outfield, first base prospect, and the bat is good, the power's good. The raw power, it's, you know, you look at, yes, it's offensive heavy environment down there in Frederick, but as we've talked a lot about, like a lot of Ike Irish's like opposite field power has been like uber impressive this year. But yeah, in the eyes of like national evaluators, I think calling them boring was like hitting the nail on the head there. Like that's accurate. Like from that sense, like, you know, like going to the futures game and seeing, I think I told you guys, like watching Jesus Mate play defense out there, like, that is shiny, electric, fun. If you are somebody who's putting these lists together and you watch him play defense, and then you compare that to like Vahiva Eloy, who's just more mechanical. He does things more soundly. He's very methodical in how he goes about his business. He's going to get the job done, but it's not the young flashiness and everything that I think a lot of these guys are going to become a little bit more attracted to. But yeah, so I just think, you know, that doesn't mean that Ike Irish isn't going to be a very good big leaguer. I think he can be. Same thing with Eloy. It's, you know, I don't think we've ever been, you know, over promising like what Eloy could be. I think we've always kind of agreed that if he gets to the big leagues, you're probably looking at hopefully a 250 hitter who's going to strike out more than you want to see. It's like those strikeouts aren't going anywhere, but he's still going to hit 20 plus home runs every year and be a very good defender. So yeah, if you're putting together one of these top national lists, it's the hit tool questions are going to dock Aloy, and same thing with Ike Irish with the position. That's it.
Yeah, maybe Aloy could be a Joey Ortiz type, but in a more not as short king syndrome, and a little more consistent, hopefully. But time will tell. We'll find out. Bobby Jones, my man from the Wire Recap Podcast, Episode 1, wants to know: do Ianson and or Giroux start 2027 in Norfolk, and does Azukar start 2027 in AA? Zach?
Yes to all three. I think that Ianson and Giroux have shown enough at AA this year that they can get the bump up to AAA. That's not always a guarantee. He was hurt, granted, but I think that even if Jerron Watts-Brown had started this season healthy, he probably would have gone back to Chesapeake because of the depth that was at Norfolk. But I think in Giroux and Ianson's case, they're arguably 1-2 or 1-3 going into next season in your organizational farm system rankings. Both guys have had extensive innings at AA this year, and I think that they'll get the bump. And then with Azukar, I really don't see any reason to hold him back in Frederick based on what I've seen this year. Do I think that there could be some challenges for him at AA? He's challenged by better off-speed stuff, better breaking balls. Yes, but I don't think you need to hold him back at high A for an extensive time period to try to get better at that. He may be better off going up to AA, kind of taking his lumps early on if he is going to struggle, and improving from there. And just one more point to go back to with Ianson and Giroux. Keep in mind that with the lockout, if the lockout does happen, which it's probably going to, and if it costs even a small part of the season or forces some things to be rescheduled, there's probably going to be some pitchers on the 40-man that would have started the year in Norfolk that now won't. They may have to stay back in Sarasota for a few more weeks just to tune up because it would be a short spring training. Ianson and Giroux are not going to be on the 40-man going into next year regardless. So anything that happens to the lockout doesn't affect their progression. They can go up to AAA. That's not going to help guys that are really further down the list and further down the bubble, because I think that if there's a shortage of arms at AAA, the Orioles has turned to minor league free agents to fill a lot of those roles. But Ianson and Giroux, when I think both guys have shown that they've mastered AA, that would only help their case for getting to AAA.
It's pretty easy. Yep. I think Indy Azukar is going to get to AAA before he's 21 at this rate. Like he's still, like you touched on some of the things he does need to improve on and things he does need to show, but guy's got like 62 extra base hits in like 101 games this year. You saw that video, that clip this weekend, the cannon of an arm that guy has. He's impressive. And just for being just 19 years old still, it doesn't turn 20 until I think February. So yeah, he could start next year in AA. He should be challenged in AA. And honestly, if he takes to it well, he's not going to spend a ton of time there. He's going to get to AAA before he's 21. Giroux and Ianson are both going to start in AAA regardless. They need to. Ianson's probably the questionable one about like, do you promote him right now? Because he just came over from the Red Sox organization. But Giroux, as we talked about a little bit the last couple of weeks, I think he's ready for AAA. You might need room, but there's very quickly, some for good reasons, some bad reasons, that there's a lot of room opening up in AAA right now.
Yeah, I mean, you got to consider Trey Gibson, and looks like Luis De Leon will be on the 40-man roster by then if the reports are correct and the Orioles hang in there enough for it to happen. So you're probably looking at a AAA rotation of Ianson, Giroux, Erman, Levi Wells, if he can be healthy enough to go, and Jerron Watts-Brown. And I'm sure there'll be some other guys in the mix if they want to do a 6-man rotation, what have you. And yeah, Azukar will start in AA and will not end there. He's going to be probably the best chance the Orioles have at the next top 10 overall prospect, I think, is if he really takes off next year, which kind of expect him to do at this point. He is just so electric, so impressive. And how about, just to throw this in the mix, what about Caden Hunter? Does he start 2027 in AAA? I think he probably starts back at AA. Maybe not for long, but at least starts there.
Yeah, I think you go ahead and keep him in AA. He'll get maybe 2, maybe 3 more outings here. So hopefully he can get to like 100 innings. I think it's not going to be he could force the issue, obviously, but I don't think it's any issue at all if he starts back in AA for the first couple of weeks. But you'll see, of course, how trades and injuries, and it's always going to find a way to shake out. But hopefully you don't have too many injuries down there at the start of the year. And Hunter, if there's no room in AAA, so be it. That's a pretty good problem to have.
Completely agree. I mean, I brought up the example of Juwan Ross Brown a moment ago, but Luis De Leon was held back at AA too, coming into this year. Granted, he didn't have a lot of time there the previous year, but he did have the fall league experience. He went back to AA. I think that if Hunter goes back there, it's not an indictment on him as a prospect. It's just reality that jump from AA to AAA is the hardest it's ever been for pitchers. And you want to put a lot of depth at the top of the organization at the beginning of the year, knowing that you're going to churn through arms. I mean, this is a separate conversation for another day, but I thought the Orioles were prepared for that this year, and it turned out their depth got tested very quickly early on. So, if anything, I think that this coming off season, they're probably going to go further in that direction of trying to find a veteran arm or two that they can stick down at AAA, even if it is some internal options like Cade Pilovitz, just to have somebody ready to go early on in the year if you have an injury. And that's probably going to hurt guys like Hunter, but he just goes there to AA and does his thing. He'll be up in Norfolk before too long, and this time next year, we'll be discussing whether or not he's have a bullpen roll down the stretch.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? Driving high will get you a DUI. And if you're wondering if law enforcement can tell you're driving high, well, everyone else can. Friends?
I can tell you drove high.
Parents?
I can tell when you drive high.
Relatives?
I can tell. You drove here high, didn't you?
So what makes you think law enforcement can't?
I can tell.
If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Let's go over this question now from Brady Jones, and I just want to throw this out there. This question was actually dropped in the Mailbag chat in Discord over a month ago. It was back in early July, and it just got buried by a lot of trade deadline and draft-related discussions last month, but I thought it was a good question then. I wanted to put it in our back pocket and bring it back out for when it might be relevant. Having a pretty good feeling that it would still be relevant in August, and it turns out it was. So just a word to our listeners, if you ask a good question, it doesn't get answered right away, it might eventually resurface. So here's this question from Brady. How much does defense matter? For years, I have had the take that a player's defense will always take a backseat to what they can do at the plate. This season, however, the pendulum is moving a bit the other side. I think the 2026 O's defense has cost them games. How important is it in today's game? And Bob, I'll start with you there.
I agree with Brady that the pendulum is swinging. I still think, first and foremost, you got to be able to hit and impact the ball if you want to be a serious offensive prospect in the majors. But almost, and I think the Orioles would agree, because since Enrique Bradfield Jr. was drafted, that whole draft had athletes like Tavian Josenberger. Ty Head was just drafted. I think they're kind of going that direction. Almost like good defense is almost like the new Moneyball, place you can kind of get more value out of a lower draft spot or what have you. I think it's taking time to matriculate up to the major leagues. And yeah, we're almost like the American League Philadelphia Phillies, which is never a good thing. On defense at the major leagues this year, I would love to know. It's not even just fielding; it's just boneheaded plays in general. Like, we should be above 500, but that's another podcast. But yeah, I agree. I think defense should get more attention. I think it is. It's just going to take. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and improve the defense.
Well, I found this article from Travis Sawchik in preparation for this. I don't know if you guys remember this. I don't remember reading this article, but it was on MLB.com. And it addresses this specifically because I also agree with Brady. Watching the defense at the major league level has been maddening this year. And I'm not throwing this out as gospel or saying the Orioles' approach this year was correct. And if this or that happens, the season would have gone a different way. But I'm just going to present this article as Travis Sawchik wrote it. But it is called, Does Trading Defense for Better Bats Work? Here's what history says. And he wrote this in February because he saw teams like the Pirates signing Marcell Ozuna, pushing Ryan O'Hearn, old friend, into the outfield. The Reds prioritizing Eugenio Suarez, the Mets and how they deployed Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, and the Orioles bringing in Pete Alonso and Taylor Ward. So it's kind of this idea that teams like the Orioles, the Reds, these smaller mid-major teams, like you got to pick a lane and go for it. You really can't just throw hundreds of millions of dollars at the players you want to form your team. So you got to pick a lane. And teams tend to pick the offense, the home runs, over the defense, even if it's sometimes a very drastic decrease. But he looked at the last 10 years, minus COVID, and looked at teams that added 10 runs while removing 10 defensive runs saved and vice versa. And he found that there were 47 teams that made that trade-off, trading away defense for more offense. Those 47 teams added 17 wins, so not a ton. But those teams included 6 teams that either won a World Series or a pennant, and 2 that won 100 games in the regular season. And the Blue Jays, the 2025 Blue Jays were the most extreme example. They lost 51 defensive runs saved, but they won 20 more games. But Travis also notes that when you trade away the defense for more offense, these teams will bring in guys like the Red Sox bringing in JD Martinez, but that also coincided with Rafael Devers coming up and kind of emerging as a star for them at the time. Right? Alex Bregman with the Astros was another example he gave off. So, the Orioles really didn't have that this year as far as a prospect coming up and truly emerge. We didn't see the true Jackson Holiday breakout, for example, but he used Fangraphs WAR, StatCast measurements, multiple different methods to conduct this study. And they all found the same thing, basically that slugging wins games, slugging wins championships. And since 2016, teams that added 5 points of WRC plus, but lost 10 or more outs above average, won 8 games per year more. And teams that lost 5 points of WRC plus, but added 10 more outs above average, lost on average 8 more games per season. So history tends to say, go for the bats, go for that power. But yeah, of course, if you apply that to the Orioles this year, again, Jackson Holiday didn't really have his breakout. Gunnar Henderson was pretty dreadful for much of the year. A lot of other factors that's a whole episode. I feel like we could do 2 hours just on this topic alone. But I thought that article was pretty interesting in his study. So just figured I'd bring that up as a talking point there.
That's a great find there, Nick. I'll say this, which is that I've kind of always been of that mindset too, that you go for slugging. And if your defense is just good enough, you're going to get by in the regular season. And there are some examples of that. I ran through the numbers today. Coming into Monday, the Orioles had 82 errors, the most in the American League, 5th most in the majors. They ranked 22nd league-wide in fielding run value. The Phillies, though, were only slightly better than them in fielding run value. Outs above average, -8, that's 24th in MLB, ahead of the Yankees. So those are 2 teams that have elite lineups that can overcome some of the defensive struggles. The Orioles lineup this year would have been significantly better if it had several other things fallen into place. Had Samuel Basallo not gotten hurt when he did, gotten off to a better start, had Gunnar Henderson performed better for the first half of the year, Jackson Holiday being hurt, missing the amount of time that he's had, there's a lot of factors that go into it. What I would say, though, is that for next year, the Orioles do probably need to take a little bit of a balance. And that doesn't mean that you trade, one of your best hitters, not that they're going to do that, but one of your best hitters for a better defender, or you decide we're just going to give up on Samuel Basallo catching because there's a really good glove first backup catcher out there that we want to sign. You don't have to go in that direction, but I think it's fine tuning the little things. You're not getting a lot of production from your corner outfielders this year, and their struggles on defense just make that problem worse. So it's figuring out where on the roster can you, A, make upgrades, and B, where can you incorporate defense into that? Where can you do a better job of filling out your bench? What strategy is your coaching staff using to shift its defenders? Is that working? And does that need to be reevaluated? There's a lot of things that go into it. So I tend to think the answer is yes, they do need to go and improve the defense, but it doesn't need to be the top priority this offseason. And making that the number one focus is not going to dramatically turn this team around next year.
I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wonder if having an EBJ available as a fourth, fifth outfielder next year, even if you're offense first for the first 7 innings, say, and then maybe late in close games, you bring in that defender. Maybe that will help. Maybe that, I don't know if that's the answer, but maybe it will help.
And I mean, Jordan Westberg was supposed to be obviously a major part of this team. Like, I mean, didn't they have to tell Kobe, hey, I know you're already packed and coming down to Sarasota, walking over to Sarasota. I know he's down there in Florida already, but like, bring your third baseman, Smith, even though he didn't even like practice third base in the offseason because that wasn't the plan with Kobe Mayo this year. So Westberg getting injured also kind of throwing a major wrench into the entire operation. So yeah, I do agree. I think there needs to be more emphasis, but still at the end of the day, I don't think the issues a lot of people, ourselves included, have with the defense this year wouldn't be as exaggerated if this offense showed up a little bit more. All right, we'll move on to a question from Half. He says, what would you put the odds at that a non-debuted arm is in our opening rotation next year? Bob?
I was thinking about this, and I think I will say 10% because, yeah, it would be awesome, exciting, great sign if, say, a Joseph Giroux, Anthony Ianson, Caden Hunter, what have you, Nestor Erman break out, win that fifth starter's spot, and take off from there. That'd be awesome. I just don't know if historically that's been the Orioles' MO. I think if it was bullpen, it would be much more likely, like Anthony Nunez. And I feel like there's been examples in the past in the bullpen where that's happened. But I think we're going to go into 2027 expecting Kyle Bradish, Shane Baz, Brandon Young, and either Trevor Rogers or a free agent / trade acquisition in that fourth spot. And I do think the fifth spot will go to someone who's already here, but Trey Gibson has debuted. We expect Luis De Leon to debut. But then Cade Povich will still have something to say about possibly getting one more shot in that fifth starter's role, or maybe they acquire 2 starting pitchers, Rogers and an outside acquisition. So, yeah, I'll say 10% just because I do think that the guys that could do it are talented enough to make it happen. But I think even if they do, there's a good chance that they'll just start in AAA and be that first guy up when the time comes.
I'm going to put the odds a little bit lower. I'll say 7%. The real wild card in this for me, though, is Michael Ferret, because you can't rule out Ferret debuting this year, even though he has not hit particularly well since the trade. But the Orioles know who he is very well as a pitcher. Mike Elias seemed to indicate after the trade that they believed he was close to Major League ready. So I wouldn't rule out the prospect of Michael Ferret getting some innings before this season ends. And at that rate, he's out of the mix. And honestly, he's really the only guy, unless Luis De Leon doesn't come up this year. If De Leon doesn't come up, then it's a different conversation. But if De Leon does come up, you have him having logged innings. You have Trey Gibson having logged innings in the majors this year. Levi Wells will have missed a lot of time with injury. They're not going to want to push him up to the majors. So I would have to think at that rate it's Ferret or Nestor Herman. But Herman right now hurt, so I don't know how much we're going to see him before the year is over. So I would say about 7% under the belief, like Bob said, that you're going to have Bradish, Baz, Young in the rotation. If they don't re-sign Trevor Rogers, they're going to find his replacement on the trade market or through free agency. And, they probably will make another starter acquisition or 2. And that's the way they go about that could almost be its own episode. But I think that they're going to address the depth in ways that probably prevent a guy who doesn't get major league innings before the season ends starting a year in the majors next year.
I completely forgot Michael Ferret existed, so you could throw him into that AAA rotation next year we were talking about, and yeah, as a possibility for this as well.
Yeah, it's I in that same range because I do agree with you. Got Bradish, Boz, and Brandon Young locked in. Ideally, you look at the upcoming potential free agent class for starters. It's not great. Obviously, it's not super deep. So maybe Trevor Rogers can be the top target. Maybe this is the year that the Orioles are able to land that fish in free agency, somebody that they like and they're able to bring in. But either way, I think you should see another Shane Baz-esque trade. They've got the prospect capital for it. They've got more than enough prospect capital to pull off another one of those fun trades. Yeah, it's just hard. It's not going to be Jira or Ianson. I do agree. I do wonder what the inner circle talk is after that Kate Anderson debut, as far as MLB front offices and player development staffs and what they're looking at. Or maybe they already kind of figured that out and they're just thinking it's the Mariners. What the hell are y'all doing? Which you could ask about 500 things this season with the Mariners. But yeah, it's going to be really tough. I don't see really any of these guys, but I do agree. It's probably Ferret. Honestly, Ferret's probably got the inside track just because it does seem like the Orioles clearly they wanted to trade for him again. And Elias's comments there. But yeah, that comment about Brandon Young, I just saw that distracted me. Brandon Young hasn't looked as good recently. He's also said he's got the finger issue that he's been dealing with for a while now. Doesn't seem to be bothering him too much, but I think it's there, and that's in the back of his mind. And also, I don't have his innings pulled up, but he has got to be at...
It's a record.
Yeah, all right. He's got to smash the record. I think Brandon Young has hit a wall at this point. So I'm not counting on elite Brandon Young performance down the stretch. And that's no fault of his own. It's just a guy who's had 2 Tommy John surgeries and a long road to where he's at right now. So I think he's just hitting a wall, unfortunately, at the end of the year.
Yeah, as Gary Brown says, I think he's tired. He's pitched a lot of innings. I think he'll be good. I agree, Gary. And speaking of Michael Ferret, my man Bobby Jones from the Wire podcast, I don't know why I got both of his questions tonight. Can you speak to the Tampa Bay side of the Wells trade? Tyler Wells, that is. Seemingly the two organizations have a completely opposite view of an impending Rule 5 draft. For the life of me, I cannot figure this out from their end, and I am a Wells fan. So I'm not even trying to say he's not very good. Nick?
I think it was pretty just straightforward. It's an issue of when you look at the Rays and good teams like the Rays constantly have roster crunches like this. And Tyler Wells was clearly someone they're very familiar with. They needed bullpen help. They're going for a World Series this year. And so they targeted Tyler Wells, who has, the control. So you got to give up something a little nice to get a guy like Tyler Wells. They gave up a prospect who needs to be added to the 40-man this offseason. He's thrown 0 MLB innings, though. And yeah, the Rays shored up their bullpen with a proven veteran arm that they like. Just felt like it was a pretty straightforward move. And the Orioles get a prospect back that they really enjoyed. So they get Shane Baz and they get Michael Ferret back. And it'd be fun, hopefully, in this time next year, we're talking about both these guys in the Major League rotation at the Major League level. But yeah, just felt like that was a pretty straightforward deal for both teams. Thought it made a lot of sense, both sides.
I agree with Nick. Thinking about this trade a little bit more in the weeks since it happened, the Rays are still in a position to run the table in the American League. If they can win the AL East, that's going to give them a leg up going into the playoffs. You combine that with this really weak playoff field. They've got a pretty... it's not a clear path, but the path for them to get to the World Series this year is there. And you have the opportunity to pick up bullpen help and a guy that has shown he can be good for teams down the stretch in that role. And you give up Ferret, and what's a high price to pay? Maybe. It's not a trade I think we would have seen in the offseason when the market for bullpen help is a little slower and a little bit more in the buyer's favor than it is at the deadline. But given the circumstances where you have more than this season left of Wells under team control, and you have the pitching that the Rays have, not to mention that this offseason they will probably trade for some other organizations, Michael Ferret, you can afford to make that move if you're them.
Yeah, I think I do agree. They overpaid to get Tyler Wells, but I also think the Orioles liked Ferret when they had him. clearly. I think they showed that then. And I think the Orioles and Rays have pretty similar evaluations on players. I think that's why they probably have matched up decently well over the last couple of years with trades. Clearly, Tampa Bay targeted Ferret in the trade for Shane Baz, so they wanted him. I don't think he did anything to make them unhappy. And I think the Orioles still liked him enough to target him on a sell high on a bullpen piece at the deadline to get him back. So I think it's just these two teams both really like Michael Ferret, and it was kind of like musical chairs. Who's going to end up with him at the end of the season? I think if the Rays had the chance to trade back for him, maybe they would after the season. But I agree. It's weird just because it did seem like a lot for Tyler Wells, and I'm happy that they were willing to give him up. Maybe it was him and 3 other guys, and the Orioles said, no, out of these options, if you want Tyler Wells, we want Michael Ferret back.
Go this question now from Vivek, and it sticks to the theme of pitching. Can we do a rotation review in the minors and what promotions you would make? So in other words, are there starters that you think with the limited time that we have left in the minors could be promoted regardless of whether it's lower level arms or maybe somebody in Norfolk that could see big league time outside of Luis De Leon, who we've already talked about a lot tonight? Nick, I'll start with you there.
When I was looking through, honestly, curious if you guys feel differently, but I think the only guy that I look at and say, can we get this guy up now? It would be Jirwa. Rewarding Sebastian Gongora as well with a few innings. I think he deserves it. I'm not moving Caden Hunter up to AAA right now. I'm going to leave Boston Bateman at high A the rest of the way. Ianson's another obvious choice as well, but it's hard to know kind of like what the organization has planned for him, having just come over in that trade and, not spending all year working with Orioles coaches and development staff. Like they could just let him make 2-3 more starts in AA and then get to work on him in the off season. But also if they like what they see already and they're not really making that many tweaks, they could also bump him up to AAA these last 2-3 weeks. But I think it's really just Joseph Jirwa and Sebastian Gongora for me. I think some of the lower arms, you're going to start seeing a lot of these guys kind of get shut down at this point. So yeah, those are the two for me.
Yeah, I did the exercise, and I did bullpen arms as well. Not that there were that many to do it, but I went through the exercise of, okay, when single A season ends, who do I think could get that extra week at double A? And I said, Boston Bateman, Kyson Witherspoon, Braden Sloan, Todd Knebi. Maybe they can get an extra week of play in that next level. And then after the double A season ends, who could get that last week or two in triple A? I said, Ianson, Jirwa, and honestly, Jirwa could happen even earlier if there's room for him in AAA. Sebastian Gongora, Pat Riley, Micah Ashman, and Richard Gouache.
Yeah, for me, if I'm looking at the minors, it's between Gongora and Jirwa. I think that both guys would deserve it at this rate with their performances. And yeah, you can debate whether or not it's a better move to shut them down. But I think overall, if they get to AAA, it's deserving. I also, and it's granted his production at AAA has been kind of up and down this year. But I also wouldn't be shocked if we see Trey Gibson make another run through the majors before this season ends. We were just talking about Brandon Young a moment ago. Maybe he's hitting a wall. We don't know exactly how the Orioles are going to handle Kyle Braddis. The sense is there is no hard innings limit, but if they get out of it in September, maybe they shut him down. So has Gibson shown in AAA that he's ready for another run in the majors? That's debatable, but the bottom line is he had big league innings earlier this year. We know he's been working on some things down at AAA to be better for that next call-up. And even amid the struggles of his second longer stint in the majors this year, there were some positives in there. So I wouldn't be shocked if he gets another crack at the majors before the season's out.
I think I saw that, was it Lance that said, I think Trey Gibson's just bad now? I think that's ridiculous take. I think Gibson is a known tinkerer. He's a known adjuster. I mean, you could have said the same thing about Brandon Young last year. I think it's way too early to just give up on Trey Gibson at this point.
Yeah, agreed.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? Driving high will get you a DUI. And if you're wondering if law enforcement can tell you're driving high, Well, everyone else can. Friends,
I can tell you drove high.
parents,
I can tell when you drive high.
relatives.
I can tell. You drove here high, didn't you?
So what makes you think law enforcement can't?
I can tell.
If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
We'll go to Ben H., who wants to know what former Orioles player that isn't in the Orioles Hall of Fame should be. Zach?
Well, I think that, the reason I wanted to get this question in here, we haven't been on the air since Trey Mancini announced his retirement. Congratulations to him. I know that when he's eligible, he will be in there. Outside of that, I have to be honest, I know the Orioles Hall of Fame is there, but I don't think about it that much outside of when new classes are announced, because to me, the selection, who gets selected, what the criteria is, isn't really clearly defined. And over the years as a fan, it's just kind of been like, oh, I know it when I see it. So I know that when Anthony Santander's career is over years from now, he'll get in the Orioles Hall of Fame. So it's like those guys where you know it, you see it, they're going to get in. And then the more borderline cases, when they pop up, they're in the Hall of Fame. It's like, oh, okay, I could see that. That's kind of how I felt about Storm Davis getting in this year. Not the first player I would have thought of, but also not undeserving either. So Mancini for me would be the clear answer. And then if you want to look among active players, Anthony Santander, Cedric Mullins probably get in. I don't know if Zach Britton is in yet. I don't think he is, but he should be whenever he's eligible. So that's another one I would throw in, but that's a non-active player. So those are a few off the top of my head.
Yeah, I did a little digging here, and for non-active players, Rafael Palmeiro is not, and I know that he's got certainly some off the field stuff going on that maybe is keeping him out, but I think he deserves to be in there. Matt Wieters, Zach Britton, I could see in there, but yeah, as active guys until recently, Trey Mancini, Cedric Mullins, Manny Machado, and Adley Rutschman. Outside of that, Anthony Santander, he would be one of those guys where it's like, if he got in, I'd be like, yeah, makes sense, but I don't know if it's a slam dunk.
Yeah, I also agree. I don't pay attention to who's in. I do agree with like what you said, Zach. It is cool. Like watching that game, Hall of Fame induction night, and having Chris Davis on the broadcast. Like that was pretty cool to see. Sure, but yeah, Trey Mancini, I guess, would be the main one there. But definitely just take that moment. Shout out to Trey. 117 career home runs in 6 years. Didn't realize he hit that many until I looked earlier today. The quality of seasons he had, just because it seems, that was pre-2020. So that seemed like a whole lifetime ago. But yeah, shout out to Trey. I just remember, I think it was after they traded, not they did trade him, but after he went to the Astros, they did trade him. I don't know where I was going with this, but after he goes to the Astros and we were talking, I think I was home with my mom and dad and we were watching a game and thinking like, oh, it'd be really cool if he won a World Series with the Astros, but like that also sucks that, this is another one of those guys that doesn't get it when he's on your team, and that's unfortunate, but like that's the kind of player that you're like still want to cheer for. And I still remember watching that World Series and being super happy seeing Trey Mancini win that World Series ring. But then I think my mom just casually dropped into conversations like, oh yeah, Trey Mancini like lived with like one of her best friends for like months when he was in AAA Norfolk, coming through the minor leagues, and was telling me all these Trey Mancini stories that her friend told her. And I was just like, and you never told me. You never told me that Trey Mancini was right there. I could have just went down back home to Norfolk and hung out with Trey Mancini. But no. But yeah, shout out to Trey for a fantastic career and all that comes next for him.
Absolutely. And domino effect, my man with all the starting pitching depth in the organization and the lack of left-handed bullpen talent, do you think the Orioles will finally put Cade Povich in the bullpen? Nick?
I'm not converting him yet. I mean, if you want to use him in the bullpen at some point this year, sure. But like full-time, no. Just because like if you're doing it because you think there's too much depth, like there's never too much depth. That's not a thing. So he's got minor league options. So yeah, I'll just say keep him in that same role next year. Like I know Bobby, you mentioned earlier, he's going to have something else to say next year as far as that competition for the fifth spot's concerned. I hope so. I hope he's firmly in the mix. I want to see him succeed, but also it feels comfortable. Look, Povich has made 6 major league appearances this year. He's 1 out away from half of them being quality starts. The other 3, not so great. But still, like, you know what you're going to get for the most part with Povich. I like having him there is, AAA depth. And when you need that extra starter for 10, 12 starts a year, like, there are a lot of worse options you could have than Cade Povich. So, yeah, I like having him as depth because, again, you can never have too much of it.
Yeah, I'm not in a rush to move him to the bullpen. I will say, though, that earlier or actually back in the offseason, when there was all of that discussion about Keegan Aiken and do you bring him back? What if he implodes this year? We know what happened. But one thing that was in the back of my mind was, well, if Keegan Aiken doesn't work out, you still have Cade Povich there. So that has always kind of been in my head of, like, could he eventually fill that role in the majors? But as I think about it more, I think that Nick may have a point that he may actually be more valuable to you as depth because we've seen his numbers at AAA over the course of his career. He's been very good there, and he's one of those guys that when he's had extended runs in the majors, he's had some outings that have been really rough, but then he can throw a few in there that are effective for you. So if he's in, a year from now, he's a left-handed Spencer Watkins where break glass in case of emergency, he comes up from AAA, he throws a start or 2, keeps you in both of those games, he goes back down to AAA. That's a win.
Yeah, and next year is his last option year as well. So I think, let him compete for that 5th starter spot or at least be that first depth option waiting in AAA. The way I kind of picture it going is he wins that 5th starter spot because it's like, all right, here's one of your last chances, let's say, to really grab it and run with it. One more option year. So he starts the year in 5th starting pitching spot, and either he takes advantage of it and holds it for at least a while, or he kind of quickly gets moved back down to AAA, or maybe then you can start thinking about a bullpen. But I think he's probably a year away from when he runs out of options. Yeah, he might have to be a bullpen only guy.
I just don't understand the desire to trade these guys, like guys in the Cade Povich role all the time. Like, you need so many Cade Poviches in your organization. No, Povich isn't the guy that obviously, if you can use him to upgrade your major league rotation, absolutely you do it. But I'm not moving him to the bullpen right now, and I'm not trading him just to trade him. He's pretty solid in his role that he's in.
Anyone else live with Trey Mancini? Because we got Sarah. He lived with her uncle when he was in Aberdeen. I don't know if Super B is making a joke or not, but he said, well, he lived with my girlfriend when he was in Bowie. I don't know if that's serious, but how about Delmarva? Anyone in Delmarva in the chat?
I do know someone who lived in the same apartment building as Mancini. I think either the first time he was called up or his rookie year in the majors.
We're all connected.
Maybe I'll sell him my house at some point.
Go over this question now for Nick, but I just want to acknowledge real quick because Garrett brought this up in our YouTube chat. Manny Machado is a very obvious Orioles Hall of Famer that is an active player, and I just wanted to bring that point up in case we neglected to mention him during that conversation.
I mentioned him, but very briefly.
Thank you. All right.
And I only used the last name. So
we'll go to this question now from Nick, who wants to know, with the Arizona Fall League releasing their schedule and team assignments today, who are a few Orioles prospects you would like to see play this fall? And Nick, I'll let you answer Nick's question for this one.
Yeah, we're not making up names to put in there like some other mailbag articles that get put out there. But it was cool to see the AFL. It was another one of those signs of like, oh, here we go. It is the end of the year. It is wrapping up. We are entering fall. So yeah, just going through the list kind of off the top of the head. Brandon Butterworth, I'd like to see him out there in the Arizona Fall League, make up for some missed time. Micah Ashman, I know he's had a couple IL stints, so that could be a fun little experiment for Ashman out there out west. Get to go back home for the most part, home-ish. Kiefer Lord and or Braxton Bragg, depending health. We don't really have like up-to-the-minute health updates on either of those guys, but both would be candidates, I feel like. Twine Palmer, Jordan Sanchez, I threw that name out the other week, I think. I'd like to see him getting challenged. Harrison Kryling, the new guy from the Mariners. Like to see him a little bit more. And Teddy Sharkey be another name. He's healthy and pitching extremely well. And another name, Vance Honeycutt, I think could also be an option. Just Orioles moved him up to Double-A for a reason or reasons. So if there's still genuine belief there, then I don't know, send him out there, challenge him a little bit.
Honeycutt would be fun. That would be good. Butterworth is interesting. Jordan Sanchez I had here. Reed Trimble, has he been before? I think he has.
Yeah.
But if you need him to get at bats, it could be a way if he's healthy. RJ Austin, he missed some time this year. Maybe he could be a guy. Pitchers, I had Patrick Riley, if you want to get him some more innings. Kiefer Lord, if he gets healthy. Eber Cartaya, if he gets healthy. Tyson Neighbors, and Teddy Sharkey. But yeah, it should be interesting to see who they pick.
I really don't have any more names to add to the group that you both covered there, except there's one off-the-wall name I thought about when I saw this question. That's Miguel Rodriguez. Just because he missed a lot of time last year with an injury, he didn't start the year on a full season roster this year. So he has some lost time to make up for, but he's performed pretty well when he has been on the field this year. And that's a guy that you're probably looking at. You would like to see him as your opening day catcher in high A next year, I would like to think. So this could be a way for him to, one, extend his season, and two, face some older competition in preparation for that jump.
If anything, I know you usually get like a coach that goes out there too, whether it's a pitching coach or hitting coach at what level. I think that's random every year and up to the organization. But yeah, especially if you're sitting in a pitching coach, especially, it's what they're playing for Peoria this year. But sending Miguel Rodriguez out there, even if he doesn't get to play a ton, they always need catchers. Getting to work with those guys, some extra work behind the plate. I like that one.
Well, in now to our final segment. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing. Located at 1421 Ridgely Street, Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. But if you don't have tickets to the game or the Orioles are out of town, Checker Spot is a great place to go and watch the game. They have plenty of good food and drinks to go along with televisions for following the action. Plus, they are open 7 days a week, so be sure to check them out. Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street in South Baltimore. And we'll go to this question now from Connor, and this is kind of a fun, off-the-wall way to end this episode. Pick one player from each full-season minor league level to put onto the big league team to help them win right now. Who would you pick from each team? Who would be the most ready to do it? So, in other words, just from Norfolk through Delmarva, pick the guy that you would put on the major league roster now that you think could help them win, and say who you think the most ready would be. And Nick, I'll go back to you to start this one.
I will go Norfolk Luis De Leon for the reasons we've been talking about for many weeks and years. Chesapeake, I'm going to say Brock Moore. I don't know if people are aware of how elite his raw stuff is. Fastball is touched 101. And I know coming into the year, there was a really good article. He was tabbed as like one of the potential breakout prospects in the Mariners system because like all of his pitches had above average whiff rates. And the slider had like the most movement in the entire Mariners organization and some like silly whiff rate, like 65, 70% whiff rate or something last year. 6'6", tall guy. So I think he's a very legit addition in that Taylor Ward trade. So I'll say Brock Moore. Frederick, got two relievers. So I'm going to say give me RJ Austin for the speed and defensive versatility. Since I'm not going Bradfield out of Norfolk. And then Delmarva, I want more speed and I want vibes and I want Ty Head. If anything, he's going to play good center field defense. He's going to bring some speed. He's already showing that down there in Delmarva. It's trying to be different than saying Enrique Bradford Jr. for my answer there, but speed, defense, and vibes. If anything, just vibes on the bench for Ty Head. But those are my four guys. Who would be the most ready? Luis De Leon, for sure.
All right. So the way I went about this was I'm not bringing up all four of these guys. I'm independently picking a guy as if that was the only guy I could bring up. So AAA, I did go EBJ. So that's pretty obvious. Speed and defense. Fifth, fourth outfielder type. AA, I went Micah Ashman for left-handed relief help. I think he's proven at least that World Baseball Classic, he could do it at the semi-major league level, if not even beyond that, depending on which team he was playing. High A Frederick, I went, again, left-handed temporary reliever Boston Bateman. I know people love the way he's looked in these short stints. I don't think you turn him into a reliever, but if you needed a nice power lefty, he could probably do it. And yeah, I had Ty Head as well as my Delmarva pick. Just think it makes too much sense.
Yeah, I'll go with De Leon from AAA. That was a pretty easy call for me. For AA, this one was a little bit tough because I wanted to go Micah Aspen, but I also needed to make room for a guy that I've got further down the list that I'm going to be bringing up from Frederick.
Colin Tuft?
So I wanted to go with a position player here, and as tough of a fit as it might be because the versatility is pretty limited, I went with Aaron Estrada. The power surge that he's on right now, give me that left-handed bat off the bench. Let me see what he can do down the stretch. And plus, if Jackson Holliday needs a day off here and there, it's convenient to have another left-handed hitting second baseman off your bench that you can swap in for him. Braden Sloan was my pick from Frederick. I just want to see that changeup come out of the Orioles bullpen now. Yes, he's going to have to get by on 1 or 2 pitches most nights, but this is a short stint in the majors. If he comes up and gets a couple of key outs in tight spots for you against lefties, that's a win, and I agree with both of you at Delmarva. It's absolutely Ty Head for all the reasons you mentioned.
Are you trying to Wally Pitt me on the Aaron Estrada love? Come on.
I was surprised you didn't take him. I thought for sure you were going to take Aaron Estrada.
I can't pick him for everything as much as I want to.
And with that does it for this episode. We're going to be back later on this week to look at the 2026 DSL Orioles season, talk about what stood out to us during the Dominican Summer League campaign. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon.com and sign up to become a member today. It's $3, $5, or $10 levels. You'll have access to monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, as well as bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, patron-exclusive channels within our Discord community, discounts on select items in our merchandise store, and a whole lot more. So be sure to check that out at patreon.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens and Zach Spedden, you've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.